Welcome everyone to the daily news analysis of 11th of December 2023। तो इम्पोर्टेंट आर्टिकल हिंदू न्यूज़पेपर से यूपीएससी प्रोस्पेक्टिव से जितने सारे हैं चलिए देख लेते हैं वन बाय वन। पहला जो है की सीओपी डॉक्यूमेंट कॉल्स फॉर प्रोग्रेस इन अडॉप्टिंग टू क्लाइमेट चेंज बाय 2030। देन विष्णुदेव साई chosen as new Chhattisgarh chief minister. Then calibrating a strategy for India's future growth, falling behind on listing of cases in the Supreme Court. What is the controversy over Germany's debt brake rule? Then Kaveri Basin lost nearly 12,850 square kilometers of green cover. Then Switzerland Norway ministers arriving for dialogue on trade. And next, a 21.15 lakh application received under PM Vishwakarma scheme, says Skill Ministry. Milley sworn in as Argentina braces for economic reform. Then Pina Nobilis come back here. चलिए देखते हैं। पहला जो है की सीओपी डॉक्यूमेंट कॉल्स फॉर प्रोग्रेस इन अडेप्टिंग टू क्लाइमेट चेंज बाय 2030। By 2025, all countries must have in place a detailed plan to adapt to the current and future impact of climate change in their territory and must demonstrate progress in implementing such a plan by 2030. The draft of a key climate document released on Sunday said a final version is expected to be part of the agreement when the United Nations COP28 climate summit concludes in Dubai on Tuesday. Much of the focus at the annual talks is on mitigation, getting countries to commit to time-bound plans to reduce their own greenhouse gas emissions reflected in the emphasis on the global stocktake process. However, there is an equally important process underway on adaptation. Global temperature have already risen 1.1 degrees Celsius since pre-industrial times and brought in their wake an acceleration in climate-related disasters. Exhaustive scientific investigations show adaptation refers to the adjustment in the ecological, social, and economic system that the countries must make in response to these and other anticipated climate effects. These actions are country-specific and can range from building food defenses, setting up early warning system for cyclones, switching to drought-resistant crops, to redesigning government policies according to the United Nations climate diversion. At COP21 in Paris, negotiators decided that a global goal on adaptation (GGA) was necessary to get all countries on board on a common framework for adaptation. There were 8 workshops held after the previous COP in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, where countries' representatives proposed concrete targets that could be used to quantitatively define whether the world was indeed becoming more adaptable vis-a-vis climate change. Adaptation is expected to require developed countries to invest trillions of dollars in developing countries and island states, which are most at risk from climate hazards. Again, only a fraction of what is required has made its way to where it is required. Given this, experts say they were not enthused by the latest draft of the adaptation document. The latest version of the text was disappointing, a senior observer told The Hindu. There are no clearly defined targets, no clear definition of a framework, lost of very general exhaustion, no indicators, no outcome targets, said Dr. Anand Patwardhan, who teaches and researches climate policy at the University of Maryland in the United States. Next है विष्णुदेव साय chosen as new Chhattisgarh CM. The Bharatiya Janata Party on Sunday chose Vishnudev Sai, a party veteran and former Union Minister, as the Chief Minister of Chhattisgarh. He will be the Central Indian State's fourth Chief Minister and the first tribal leader to hold the post. He is also first to hail from a region beyond the other backward classes dominated central plains in Chhattisgarh. 23 years old history. Mr. Sai elected from Kunkuri, a reserved constituency in the hilly northern tribal belt of Sarguja, from where the BJP won all 14 seats in the recent election, was unanimously chosen as the BJP's legislature party leader at a meeting held in the party headquarters at Raipur. He later met Chhattisgarh Governor Biswabhushan Harichandan as the Chief Minister designated and was handed the letter appointing him Chief Minister this week. In his first interaction with the India, Mr. Sai said his priority would be to fulfill the series of poll promises labeled Modi ki guarantee. Among others, he said 18 lakh homes would be built for the poor. I thank all the MLAs who have shown faith in me. I will work with complete honesty and try to live up to the expectations of everyone. As the CM of Chhattisgarh, I shall fulfill Modi's guarantee given to the people of by our party. In the last 5 years, 18 lakh people did not benefit from Awas Yojana housing scheme, and my top priority will be to ensure all of them get it. All those who are corrupt will be punished. We won all the 14 Sarguja seats because the Congress failure and the Modi guarantee. Modi's presence in campaign made a huge difference. The party also announced that there would be two deputy chief minister and three-time former chief minister Raman Singh will be the speaker. Dr. Singh said, National President JP Nadda has talked about it. I will discharge any responsibility given to me. He confirmed that the names of the two deputy chief ministers had been decided. There is a speculation that the BJP's current state president Arun Saw, a prominent OBC leader who was in the race for the top post, and Vijay Sharma, who defeated Congress veteran and the only Muslim minister in the previous government, Muhammad Akbar in Kawardha, has been shortlisted for Deputy Chief Minister's post. Earlier, Mr. Sai's name was proposed for by former CM Dr. Singh and supported by Mr. Sao and former Minister Brijmohan Agarwal. The new CM is considered close to Dr. Singh. Shortly after Mr. Sai's name was announced, BJP workers gathered at the Kushabhau Thackeray Parisar, the party's state headquarters in Raipur, where the legislative party meeting was held, raised slogan hailing PM Narendra Modi and the late Jaspur royal family scion Dilip Singh Judio. Besides the newly appointed CM as party MLAs, including some who were contender for the coveted post themselves emerged from the meeting. They expressed support for the new chief minister. Next, calibrating a strategy for India's future growth. India's growth in 2023-24 is currently projected by the Reserve Bank of India at 7%, while the International Monetary Fund (IMF) and the World Bank has pegged it at 6.3%, with a growth of 7.8% and 7.6% in the first two quarters of 2023-24 respectively, and a broad-based recovery in the second quarter. India is likely to realize the RBI's currently projected growth of 7% in this fiscal year. In the medium term, the IMF has projected an annual growth of 6.3% up to 2028-29. India's future growth strategy needs to be calibrated in view of changing global conditions. There is a movement towards deglobalization. Many ongoing geopolitical conflicts, such as the Russia-Ukraine war and the Israel-Hamas war, have created a climate of sanctions leading to breaks in the supply chain as well as a disruption in international settlement due to non-access to systems such as SWIFT for the sanctioned countries. World real GDP growth has also fallen, leading to reduced demand for global exports. Many countries, including India, want to reduce their dependence on imported petroleum due to supply uncertainties and price volatility. In India's case, exports experienced a sharp acceleration in the share of GDP during 2003-4 and 8-9. This peaked at 25% in 2013-14 in 2022-23, it was 22.8%, having fallen to a trough of 8.7% in 2019-20 and 21. The erstwhile export-led growth strategy may not be available to India anymore. It has to evolve its own future growth strategy. Investment rate in medium term, India will have to rely relatively more on domestic growth drivers to achieve and sustain a 7% plus real growth. In particular, domestic savings will be critical. We estimate the nominal savings having rate in 22-23 to be about 29%. One area of concern relates to the recently noted fall in the household sector's savings in financial assets, which declined to 5.1% of GDP in 2022-23 from an average of 7.8% during the pre-COVID-19 period of 15-16 to 19-20, a fall of 2.7 percent point. This fall consisted of 2.2 percent points of increase in change in gross household financial level liabilities and 0.5 percent points fall in charge change in gross household financial assets. These changes may be temporary post-COVID-19 responses. However, if these trends persist, it will pose a significant risk to India's growth potential, since it is the surplus household sector financial savings that becomes available to the government and the corporate sector to draw resources to to meet their investment their demand in excess of their own savings are converted into gross fixed capital formation (GFCF) by adding net capital inflows and deducting change in stocks valuables and discrepancies. The estimated nominal investment rate that is GFCF related to GDP was 29.2% in 22-23. However, the deflector of capital goods is lower than that of all goods. The movement of the relative deflector of capital goods is somewhat volatile. Using the 5-year average of the relative magnitude of the two deflectors, the nominal investment rate of nearly 29% would provide a real investment rate of about 33%. This need to be increased by 2 percent points to provide investable resources amounting to 35% of GDP, enabling a growth of 7% at an incremental capital output ratio (ICOR) of 5, which was its value in 22-23. If the ICOR is lower, achievable growth would be higher. Strategizing enhanced employment, India would find itself in a unique position in the next 3 decades, with a large potentially employable population seeking job in the presence of a progressively more labor-saving innovations and technologies. According to United Nations population projection, the share of India's working age population is projected to peak at 68.9% in 2030, while its overall dependency ratio would be at its lowest at 31.2%. These patterns call for increased allocation of resources for training and skilling India's growing working age population. Employment growth is critically dependent on GDP growth and the structure of output. The growth rate of the working age population is projected to progressively fall from 1.2% in 23-24 to 0% in 48-49 in 22-23. Accordingly, the periodic labor force survey (PLFS) the Worker population ratio showing the number of employed persons in the population above 15 years of age increased to 51.8% from 44.1% in 1718, depicting an average increase of 1.5 percent points per year. Going forward, a non-agricultural growth will have to be high enough to absorb labor released from agriculture, which is estimated at 45.8% in 22-23 by the PLFS. It should also be able to absorb the labor substituting impact of new technology, facilitating absorption of productivity enhancing technologies including artificial intelligence and generative AI would add to overall growth. India has committed to certain target to reduce the carbon emission in view of global climate concern in the COP26 summit in 21. India has committed to reducing total carbon emissions by 1 billion tons between 21 to 2030 and achieving the target of net zero emission by 2070. India's own initiative include the Green Grid initiatives and One Sun, One World, One Grid USOWOG. It is also placing an emphasis on the use of electric vehicles and ethanol-based and hydrogen fuels. Climate promoting technological changes may reduce potential growth rate. This adverse impact can be minimized by emphasizing service sectors growth, which is relatively climate friendly. Adhering to fiscal responsibility targets is also critical to sustain growth. In recent years, there has been considerable slippage in achieving the fiscal responsibility targets. To sustain growth close to its potential, it is important to ensure that the combined fiscal deficit and debt to GDP ratio are brought down to 6% to 60%, 6% and 60% respectively, so that the burden of interest payment relative to revenue received is kept within acceptable limits. So this would enable achieving a balance of surplus or surplus on the revenue account on the central and state government, which in turn would reduce government these savings and augment the overall savings rate of the economy. In the next 2 years, a growth rate of 6.5% seems feasible. This represents partially a recovery from the low growth rate in the COVID-19 period. Over the medium term, India's growth performance will be adversely affected by the many factors, both domestic and external, rising the savings and investment rate, providing inherent to the labor market, and adopting a technology mix which is employment friendly are issues on which the country must focus to achieve a growth rate of 7% to 7.5%. The next step, falling behind. The Monetary Policy Committee's decision to hold benchmark interest rate level while raising its forecast for full year GDP growth by 50 basis points and flagging food prices stocks induced volatility in inflation is replete with the risk of policymakers falling behind the curve on anchoring inflation expectation, notably affect observing that uncertainties in food prices along with the unfavorable base effect are likely to lead to headline inflation quickening in November December, and that recurring food prices stocks are impeding the ongoing disinflation process. The MPC has rather surprisingly opted to keep the RBI's repo rate unchanged at 6.5% for a fifth straight bi-monthly meetings. To be sure, retail inflation has moderated since the MPC last met in the early October, with the headline reading subtaining by almost 2 percentage points from August's 6.83% to 4.87% in October. But the MPC's own reckoning that modernization may be fleeting. His price gain accelerated yet again in November and December, with volatility in oil prices and financial market amid highlighted global uncertainty. There are added risk to the outlook on prices. RBI's latest household inflation expectation survey undertaken in November revealed that most household experts faster inflation in the 3 months ahead and 1 year ahead time horizon, and the median level of 9.1% and 10.1% respectively unequivocally underlying the fact that the price gain expectations are still far from durably anchored. The dissonance is messaging from the central bank is exemplified in the MPC's decision to upgrade its projection for real GDP growth in the fiscal year ending in March 2024 to 7% from 6.5% as recently as in October. For this, it is cites robust investment besides continued strengthening in manufacturing, buoyancy in construction, and a gradual rural recovery that it is helping brighten prospect of household consumption. If the RBI cumulative 250 basis points increase in benchmark interest rate since May 2022 through to February 23 and the subsequent retention of 6.5% rate have not dammed the growth impulses bearing consumption, then it would indicate that consumption is still struggling to gain traction, largely because as Deputy Governor Mitchell D. Patra observed at the MPC's last meeting, people are not increasing discretionary spending in view of high inflation. This seems to be borne out in the RBI's November round of its bi-monthly consumer confidence survey, which showed consumers retained negative sentiments on both current and future price conditions, with policymakers only too well aware that sans price stability, as Mr. Patra noted, the benefit of expanding GDP and employment will be frittered away by the erosion of purchasing power. The MPC has its task cut out. So friends, this is all for today, and we will meet from tomorrow onwards with new articles from the Hindu newspaper. So till then, keep studying. Thank you.